Welcome, my friends, to another meeting of Halloween Addicts Anonymous. This month, we're going to step away from Halloween, and we're going to work on something that's a little spring. Now, it's probably a lot more spring than a little. So we're going to work on this Bottlecap bunny, which I used the surface from Dollar Tree. It's the metal bottle cap. It's 6 inches. And if you can't get them at your Dollar Tree, I do have some on my website. Of course, I had to add a little bit to cover my costs for shipping them to myself. So, but you can get them on my website. So, from start to finish, we're going to be working on this cute little guy. One of the first things you want to do is, when you get your surface, is you want to take the jute hanger off. And then you want to give it a finish that will make it accept the paint a little bit better. That'll make the paint adhere. And what I always like to do is take my metal pieces out into the garage and with the door open, because I like to have some ventilation. And I will give them a quick coat of matte spray varnish. And that gives it just enough tooth for the paint to be able to adhere to the piece. So the first thing we're going to do, and I'm going to close in on this guy a little bit, not that much, is I want to give the inside circle a coat of Blue Haven. It's probably going to take 2 coats. So if you have a handy dandy hair dryer or a craft heated gun, that would be really nice, because then you can dry your surface in between coats, and it'll go quite a bit faster. So just a quick coat, yes, it's going to take 2, of Blue Haven in this inner circle. So I'm going to do that, and I'll come back after I have my second coat on, and we'll talk about applying the pattern. All right, so let's talk about applying our pattern. I found it's easiest, and you probably already know this, but I feel compelled to tell you everything I do, to cut the circle out. That way you can just put it down in the middle of the surface and get your pattern on. Now, I always like to kind of fold my pattern in half when I'm looking to get it centered. And then that way I know where I can line it up. And so there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So hole to hole, counting the ones the flutes that have the hole in it, there are 9. So the 5th little flute is going to be where your center is. So it helps if you line that up. And I am going to put just a couple little pieces of tape on here to hold my pattern down or in place. And let's see, there, that'll work. And maybe just right over here, just to kind of keep it where I want it. The next thing is, of course, you want to get out your graphite paper. I'm going to use white, so you may not be able to see it too much, but I will, because I'm closer to it. I'm just going to get this in here so I can get this pattern on. Right now, all I want to put the pattern on for is my bunny, the bee, and this little, what you might not understand at first, is the cracked egg that's at the bottom. So I like to use these erasable gel pens to put my pattern on, because I can see where I've been then, and if I get interrupted, I know where I stopped, because it's leaving a little bit of red ink, and I'm not sure if you could see that. I'm going to take this bunny's body all the way down, go right through the leaf on the tulip. Now on the bee, I just want to put his head and his body. You don't have to put his wings on. Let's do the other side. Now I'm going to just continue his face through that tulip. And then his body. And now I'm going to put on that pattern for the cracked egg. All right. Let's see if I got any. Oh, yep, I can see it. So it's there. All right. So what we want to do is we want to base in our bunny with fawn. So get out some fawn and a good brush to base coat with. Okay, so I'm going to base in my bunny with a coat or two, depending on how well I paint. I think it's going to be okay to just do one coat because we have a lot of stippling and stuff on top. So just give your bunny a base coat of fawn. And then we're going to base the bee's head in lamp black and the bee's body in moon yellow. And we're also going to base in that cracked egg with Blue Harbor. So I'm going to get those things based in and then I'll be back. All right, back and have my bunny and my bee and my cracked egg base coated in. So what I want to do first is work on this background. And what I want to do is I want to get out some warm white and my favorite brush to dry brush with. And I'm going to dry brush some highlighting on this background around the design. We have a few things to do to this background. I think 3 things to be exact. So the first one is to dry brush warm white highlighting all the way around. So I'm just going to go in between his ears just to lighten it up and break up that background a little bit. I'm going to go off to the side here. And if you're having to scrub to get the paint off your brush, then that's a good thing. All right. All the way down the sides here. I don't take the dry brushing all the way up to the design. I leave a little bit of space there. And let's get on the other side here. On the side we have to go around a little bee, which is not that big a deal. Okay. So I think that's good. Go ahead and wash that dry brush out. And the next thing I want to do is I want to stencil some, I always put it this way, random clusters of dots on the background just to add a little bit more interest to that background. And I'm going to do that with a stencil brush and a piece of Punchinello. Now this is a piece of Punchinello I've been using for a long time. So if you get a piece from me in class, hang on to it because you can keep using it over and over and over. So these are going to be stenciled on with warm white also. And I know some of them are going to get covered up by flowers, but it'll be okay. So there we go. See, it already pops a little bit more interest into that background. Doesn't take much. Okay, mission accomplished. I'm going to wash out my stencil brush. The next thing I want to do is I want to float some shading on the background around the egg, the bunny. I'm not going to bother with the bee, and then also around the outside edge. And I'm going to do that with floats of Blue Harbor, which is the color we based our egg in. So just a nice side load float of Blue Harbor. You kind of want to blend it out a little bit. You don't want it to be real harsh. And I'm just going to go all the way around this bunny. And see, that's a little bit dark for me. But I have this handy dandy dirty mop brush, and I'm just going to soften that out. Easy peasy fix. So I blended it out a little bit more so I'm not as offended by that float as I was that first one. So just all the way around the bunny, except where it goes over the blue, right? That would be a waste of time. Where it goes over the blue egg, not the blue background. And yes, some of this is going to get covered up, but it'll be okay. It's always good practice, right? Right. And then I'm also going to go on the blue background around the outside edge. And of course it's not going to go over the blue or the bunny itself. Just another soft float of Blue Harbor. Okay, so there we go. Background finished. So we are going to do some stippling on our bunny. And you want to get out a brush that you like to stipple with. I happen to use the same brush to stipple as I do to dry brush. And so we're going to stipple all over the bunny, except for like inside his ears and his nose. We're going to do that first with Fawn, which is his base color, plus some warm white, just a lighter value, not too much lighter, but just a lighter value. And I am just going to start stippling to make my bunny look fluffy. And that's just going to go all over our bunny, his head, his ears. If you get onto the egg, don't worry about it, it'll be okay. We're going to float some shading around there, so if you don't get all the way up to the egg, that's fine. And you can see already, initially it went on really bright, but as it dried it toned down. Now I'm going to be sure to stipple kind of off that hard line of the edge of his body and his head. I want to make him look fluffy. Okay, probably the last time I have to pick up some paint, I hope, on my brush. And I'm going up to the nose and in between the eyes. If you get on the eyes, it's okay because they're painted in lamp black, so it'll cover it up. The ears, you want to not stipple through the center. But he's looking like a fluffy bunny already. Okay, so we're going to let this dry, and then we're going to float some shading. So while we let it dry, we can go ahead and paint inside his ears and paint his nose with baby pink. I'm going to go ahead and wash out my stipple brush because it's going to sit there for a little while. So get out some baby pink and paint his nose and the inside of his ears. Let's see here. What brush do I want to do that with? A nice round brush, I think. Some nice ears. One coat will do. We have shading and highlighting that goes on top of this. Okay. And another ear. All right. Looks kind of creepy. Let's go ahead and paint his eyes in with lamp black. Okay, so there's our bunny, all based in. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we want to float some shading on our bunny, and we're going to do that with burnt umber. So, nice side load float of burnt umber. We're going to go on his ears next to his head, and that's just going to go on the fur part. It doesn't have to go into the pink part. Just a nice little float. If you want to walk it up a little ways, that'd be good. Let's walk this one up. Okay, we're also going to go down the sides of his body. So it's a good thing we're not done stippling yet. Or up the sides of his body, whichever way you decide to float. Okay, we are going to go across the bottom of his face. So I started about on where his cheeks would be. And surprisingly, I don't think I put cheeks on this guy. And let's get our mop brush out and soften that a little bit. I also want to go around his nose, all the way around it. If you get on the eyes, it's okay. Unless they're not dry. I'm going to go all the way around his little nose. Well, it's a rather large nose, actually. I also want to float on his body, under his chin, under his head. And yes, we're going to stipple on top of this, but it's going to show through. And we also want to float on his body around this egg. I also went across the bottom of his body next to the rim. Okay, just one more little place, and that's going to be above his eyes. And now I usually do this with a liner brush and some thinned burnt umber in this case. So I'm just going to get out my liner brush, a little bit of thin burnt umber, and I'm just going to line a shadow above each eye with that thin burnt umber, just to make his eyes kind of sit back into his head a little bit. All right, so we did on his ears next to his head, above his eyes, around his nose, along the bottom of his face, under his face, down the sides of his body, above and next to the cracked egg, and along the bottom edge. And that's all shading done with burnt umber. So we are going to we're going to dry brush some highlighting inside his ears and his nose with warm white. So you want to get out your brush to dry brush with again. So we're going to dry brush some highlighting inside the ears and the nose with warm white. So just all through the center of the ears. You want to lighten that up a little bit. And then also through the nose. I'm going to do like in the top half or 2/3 of the nose. All right. We are going to float some highlights in the top of his ears and across the top of his nose with warm white. Okay, so I'm going to go in the top of the inside of his ears. With that float of warm white. And then I'm also going to go across the top of the nose. You want to get out some royal fuchsia, and you want to float shading in the bottom of the ear, inside of the ears, and the bottom of the nose with that royal fuchsia. Doesn't take very much. We'll use it again later, but for right now you just need a dot of it. So I'm going to go across the bottom of his ears, but I also want to drag it up a little bit. So I'm going to kind of walk the color up a little ways. And if it's kind of rough, that's okay. The inside of a bunny's ears. Okay, and then in the bottom of his nose. Starting to look cute. Let's go ahead and stipple our body again. And this time we are going to do it with warm white with a touch of fawn. The first time it was fawn plus warm white. This time it's going to be warm white plus fawn. Blending it on my palette a little bit. So I'm going to start on the ears first. And I'm just going to stipple. We are going to stipple a little bit brighter. And here is where you can really make him look fluffy. So it's not a whole lot lighter. We don't want that yet. And yes, I am getting a little bit on the inside of the ears because I want that edge to be fluffy too. So then I'm going to do his body. Probably the best, fluffiest part is going to be get covered up with flowers or something, because that's just the way it always works. Okay, and now I'm going to go to his face. And this is where I get to start fluffing up his face. Get across the top of his head. If I don't get into in between his eyes, it's really okay. All right, so now we also want to stipple some brighter fur, and this is going to be with straight warm white, and this is where we're going to really pop up the lighter fur on the tips of his ears. I might even go to a little bit smaller brush just so I can control it a little better. That's a joke. So I'm going to go onto the tips of his ears and give him some really fluffy, lighter fur. This guy's looking a little fluffier than the original, which is fine with me. All right, now let's go to his body. Oops, picked up some kind of goober. Okay, fluffing up the edge here. He's really fluffy compared to the other one. A little bit more definite fluff going on here. So I want to go around the top of his head. Don't worry about his eyes. We can repaint the black in them. All right. He's so fluffy. Cool. I like him. He's much fluffier than the original. And that's okay. That just shows you how different we can paint on different days. I'm just going to bump up the top of his head a little bit. And maybe a little bit on where his jowls will be. All right, fluffy bunny. Cool. Wasn't that hard? It's much easier than drawing on fur with your rake brush. So now what we want to do is we want to line the mouth and the whiskers. He's got some burnt umber, a little burnt umber little line for a mouth, and 3 little whiskers on each side. And those are all done with your liner brush and burnt umber. Thin it down just a little bit, not too much. And so let's give him a little mouth. It's kind of like a comb stroke. Okay, so he has a little mouth that's kind of crooked. So I'm going to take it off and put it on straighter, I hope. Let's see if I can do this straight. Probably not, and I probably should just leave it. Oh, that's better, I think. And then he has some whiskers. I have put 3 on each side. So I'm just going to give him some whiskers. Wait, those are thick whiskers. Let me take those off too. I probably shouldn't be painting today. This is what I'm thinking. Oh, that's better. And let's give him whiskers on this side. Much better. All right, so he has whiskers. We're going to go to his eyes now. And I can see that I need to clean up one of my little eyes with a little float of lamp black. just where that fur got on his eye. Alright, now I made my bunny's eyes Irish moss, but if you'd prefer a different color, please feel free to go ahead and give him purple eyes or blue eyes or whatever color eyes you want. Brown probably wouldn't be real good. But I'm going to float some sea strokes of Irish moss in the bottom of each eye. So just a nice little side load float of Irish moss. And I'm just going to put it in the bottom of the eye. I put it just a touch above the very bottom of the eye. I leave that little rim of black along the bottom there. I want to give my bunny some eyelashes, and those are going to be with lamp black. So I just kind of squiggle on some little eyelashes, because all of my bunnies always had really beautiful eyelashes, right? His eyes look better already. And then I would just want to give him a couple of little highlights in his eyes. Those are just going to go in the top, and they're just like little set downs, just to brighten up his eyes. Let's go to our bee. Our bee's head is lamp black. His body was moon yellow. I want to line stripes on his little body with lamp black. So using my liner brush, you just want to add some little stripes, and you can go ahead and add the stinger on his bum. And that's just a little triangle of lamp black. We want to dry brush a little bit of a highlight on the head and the body with some warm white. I know it's a little tiny head and a little tiny body, but you can do it. I know you can. But I'm just going to scrub a little bit of warm white on that head and a little bit of warm white on the body, just to break it up a little bit. And now we're going to break it up even a little bit more. We're going to line a highlight with warm white on the head and the body. So just on the upper right side, just a little stroke of warm white down the head and the body. And then what we want to do is we want to get out some lamp black, and we're going to give our little guy some antenna. So get out your nice little liner brush. I think this is actually a 6/0. But just a little liner brush. You don't have to thin down the paint a whole lot. But I'm just going to give my little guy some antenna. They don't have to be real big. If you want to make them longer, you can. But he just has a couple little antennae. And now I'm going to take my, let's see, I'm going to take my, what size is this? This is a 1 liner. And I'm going to give him some wings. And I just like to load up my liner brush. And this is the same way I do lettering. And load it so that I get a flat tip on it. And I'm just going to pull some wings. And they don't have to go all the way to his body. If they do, obviously, it's okay, because that's what I just did. But if they stop before they get to his body, that's okay too. So then we're going to give him a couple more little wings on the other side. That one needs to be a little wingier. That's a word, right? Okay, and then what we want to do is we want to take our little liner brush again, and we're just going to thinly outline those wings with lamp black. So just keep it real thin and stay up on the tip of your liner brush. You're just gonna, and it doesn't even have to be right on the edge, just outline them a little bit. And if it's rough, that's even better. Like kind of has hitches and stops in it. It's alright. But I just wanted to make them stand out a little bit more than they were. Okay, so there we go. Easy peasy bee. So let's work on this egg down here. And we're going to dry brush some highlighting it on it with Blue Haven. And then you want to get out some colors from that we have in our palette to paint those little dots on. And if you want to stencil them, you can, but it's probably just as easy to paint them, considering you have this lip of this tin to work with. So I'm just going to dry brush just to give this some shape and some dimension, right? Because we all want it to look like a real egg. Okay. So there's some highlights on there. And now I'm gonna take, I used baby pink and moon yellow, warm white, and Irish moss. So I'm gonna get out a little bit of each of those colors. I already have warm white out. So let's get out some baby pink, which was our nose color, and moon yellow. Now you could dot these with like the back of your brush, but then you'd have to wait for them to dry. So I suggest you just paint them in, and I just did a couple of each, 3 of each color. So just kind of add some dots. They're not gonna, some of them might not show, but you'll know they're there. So I'm doing my Irish moss right now. And I'm going to give part of one over here on this cracked edge. Let's do some moon yellow ones. Flattened my brush out and I didn't need to. Alright, I'm going to do a moon yellow over here. And let's see, where else do I want to do moon yellow? I'll do moon yellow up here. So even if it's just part of one, it counts. Let's do some baby pink. I'll do one up here. And let's do one down here. Kind of an odd shaped circle. And I think I'll do one over here. Just part of one. And last but not least, let's add a few of white ones. And if you don't want to add white ones, you don't have to. Let's put one down here. Fill up that space a little bit. And I might not have room for 3 white ones. We'll see. And, let's do one. I think I'll do one right here. Took me a while to decide. As if it's all that important where they go. So now that we have those on there, we are going to hit that with my heat gun for a minute just to dry those dots. And then what I want to do is I want to float shading on the outside edge of each of those, of that egg, with deep midnight blue. Blend it out. You don't want it to be real harsh. We're getting there. I'm going to go along the bottom edge of the egg. Going to go all the way around, basically. Okay, one more little thing to do here, and then we can apply the pattern for the tulips and the leaves. So we just want to do a little bit brighter highlight on that right side, and that's going to be done with straight, warm white. So just a quick dry brush of warm white on that right side, just to pop that highlight up on that side. So now the next thing we can do is we can go ahead and put our pattern on for our tulips and our leaves. And so I will be back when I have that done. All right, patterns on for tulip and leaves. We're going to work on the stems and the leaves first, and those are going to be based in with Irish moss. So on the stems, I just put a line for the pattern. I'm going to flatten my brush out, my liner brush out again, and I'm just going to line a kind of fat stem. And we do some highlighting and some shading on these, so don't worry about them too much. And the last one, stem-wise. I'm going to have to come at it from the other side. All right, and then we want to go ahead and base in our leaves. And those are done with Irish moss also. They're just simple leaves. Nothing fancy here. And this guy has 2 leaves. Now we're going to float a highlight across the top of each leaf with moon yellow. And that's a regular side load float of moon yellow. It's going to go on bright, but it will tone down, so don't panic. And the leaf goes, if you can see here, the leaf goes on top or in front of the stem. Okay. All right. So we are going to float some shading on our leaves and on our stems. And we're going to do that with black forest green, which is a color we haven't used yet. So on the stems, I'm just going to touch in a little shading at the top and the bottom of each stem. Let's turn this over so we can get the bottoms. Now the bottom is on this one is going to be above the leaf. All right. And I also want to float some of this black forest green along the bottom of the leaves. And blend it out. You don't want it to be just a black forest green line. Okay, and then we have some just some little center vein lines that we're going to line with some thinned black forest green. So just a little vein line up the center of each leaf. And I didn't take it all the way to the point of the leaf, but if you want to, you can. There's no right or wrong about it. All right. So now we have a yellow, a purple, and a pink tulip. So I'm going to go ahead and base in the tulips. The one on the left is going to be based in with moon yellow. So I'm going to base these in, and I will be back. All right, so I guess I could have told you what colors the others were. The yellow is moon yellow, the purple is purple cow, and the pink one is based in royal fuchsia. Now we're going to dry brush some highlighting with warm white. We're going to do that on the yellow tulip and the purple tulip. They get warm white dry brushed highlighting. So it might not show up a whole lot, but if it does, bonus. So I'm just kind of going in the top 2/3 of that tulip, the yellow one, and then again on the purple one. And don't wash out your brush. We'll go ahead and dry brush some highlighting on our pink tulip. I'm just going to scrub my brush out a little bit on my towel and pick up some baby pink. And I'm going to dry brush some highlighting on this pink tulip with baby pink. All right. So we're going to use a color we haven't used yet. We're going to get out just a dot of spiced pumpkin, and we want to float shading on our yellow tulip with spiced pumpkin. And that shading is going to go on either side of that center petal and then in the bottom of the tulip, yellow tulip. So spiced pumpkin. Let's set in our center petal. If you needed to put the pattern back on for that, you could. going to dry that just real quick so I can float that shading in the bottom of the tulip. And I'm walking that shading up a little bit, okay? If you need to, you can mop it to soften it. So our purple tulip, we are going to float highlighting. We're going to float some highlighting in the tips. Oh, I forgot to do this on the yellow one. We're going to float a highlight in the tip of each petal with warm white. And we might as well do that on the purple one while we're at it. So, missed that little direction. So just in the tip of each petal, I'm going to touch a little warm white highlight. Makes a big difference. So it wouldn't have been a good thing to forget. I'm going to do the same thing to the purple petal. And then the pink petal, I'm going to float the highlight with baby pink. Really does make a difference. All right, so now on our purple, we are going to float our shading on with lavender, which is another color we haven't used. And it's going to be the same way we did the yellow tulip. It's going to go down on both sides of the center petal and across the bottom. And this is going to be with lavender. It's going to set in that center petal. And your tulips are going to look so much nicer. And I'm going to dry that real quick and float across the bottom. Getting close to done, guys. All right. And now with our pink tulip, we're going to float that shading with red violet. Nice soft float of red violet. And let's dry that. And float in the bottom. Okay, the tulips are looking pretty good. We just need to add a little bit of a warm white highlight on each petal. I'm going to do that with a liner brush. So on these, the yellow and the purple one, I'm going to line a highlight on the left side of the left petal, and then it's going to be the right sides of the other two petals. And it's just a quick little stroke or slash, nothing major, okay? And I'm going to go on the left side of the 2 petals and the right side of 1 on the pink one. I also want to add some dots to the tips of each petal, and I'm just going to do that with my liner brush because they will dry faster. So just a nice dot, kind of like a crown. I don't have to worry so much about keeping my hands out of it if I use my liner brush to add the little dot. And our pink guy. So there's some grass, and it comes from behind the cracked egg, and it goes in front of that pink tulip. So I'm going to line the first layer of blades with thinned black green. So I'm going to put the base of my grass in with thinned black green, and it's just grass. So just pull some little hash marks with that thinned black green. And it goes about halfway up the egg. Don't make them all go just straight up and down. Change the direction that they point. And the length. It doesn't go too far over the stem of the, just a little at the base of the stem. Okay, so I have that in, and then I'm going to line the next layer with some Irish moss, and that's thinned a little bit, not too bad. So you just want to fill up the space so you don't see so much of the brown of the bunny's fur behind it. Goes right on top of that black forest, and it can go out past. Make your grass a little taller if you want. Makes some pretty nice looking grass, actually. All right, and then the very last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to line some just little tips through here with moon yellow. So I'm using my little bit smaller liner brush, and instead of pulling from the ground up, I'm going to pull from the tip of the blade down. And you definitely don't need to line as many of these as you did your other ones. Just want to lighten up some of the areas. So there we go. Now we can go to the edge, and this is completely up to you whether you want to do it or not. But what I did is I took my my 1/2 inch flat, and I painted every other little flute with baby pink or purple cow. And so if you do, doesn't really matter where you start on this, but you're going to paint every other one. And it doesn't have to be opaque. It was just to kind of break up the metal part. Just paint every other one with some baby pink, but only if you want to. If you want to add more colors, then you need to do the math and figure out the sequence. So I'm going to go all the way around. If you want to do it with just one color, that's fine too. It's your piece. It doesn't even have to cover the flute completely. Unless you want it to. If you want it to, then go to town. Alright, so I did the pink. Kind of like it with just the pink. But I wanted to make it more springy. And I wanted to use purple cow somewhere else. So I'm going to do the remaining flutes with a coat of purple cow. Alright, once we get this done, the only thing you have left to do is to sign this bunny and add either the jute hanger back, or you can add a wire hanger. And I added some pastel colored beads just to cutesy up the hanger a little bit. Alright, easy peasy border treatment. Go back up a little bit and I'll show you the original, and just the beads I do have on my website. There's only 10 of them on here because you don't need a great big old hanger. If you buy them on my website, you'll get a bonus of a couple of egg-shaped beads that you could put on if you wanted to. But if you use the jute, just tie a knot in it. I putting that plastic in through again was a little hard, but there you go, a quick and easy project for spring. So we'll see you next month, and who knows what I'm going to come up with. It's going to be Halloween, and then in May we'll probably do something Christmas. Anyway, thanks so much for joining me. If you have any questions, you can feel free to email me or write it in the comments, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Have a great week.